This is maybe a hot take, but I believe that at its peak popularity, Realm Royale was one of the most fun PvP-focused multiplayer games out there. Much like a wingless chicken trying to fly, it crashed pretty hard and pretty quickly, but there is hope now. Ahoy, my name is SLOTH, and today we're talking about a reboot or revive for Realm Royale that seems to be on the horizon. We'll talk about the info I found, what went wrong, and what I hope they get right this time. Note that the gameplay you'll be seeing is from well after Realm Royale's peak. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the old footage anymore. Now, how do we find out? Our journey begins in January of this year, where YouTuber SmarmyTank was watching Thor's stream, ThorDG, as some of you may also know him. In this stream, Thor talked about HiRez's having job openings for Realm Royale on their website again, which is surprising considering the game is basically left in a somewhat floating dead state where people can still play it but it's not actively being developed. Thor then said on his stream that he applied for one of the positions. SmarmyTank then made a video talking about that, I'll link it below. In early March, Thor announced on Twitter that he had gotten a position at HiRez's as a game designer and community manager. He didn't specify for what game at the time, but we kinda already know what he applied for. He also had a few more hints in his profile. The job position that he put into his profile is HiRez's Associate Game Designer and Community Manager for something that's blocked out with 5 letters, a space, and 6 letters. Go figure which game that matches. And if that still is enough evidence, he also posted this meme. There is no realm in Ba Sing Se. I don't know how to pronounce that. But the original meme has war instead of realm. And the whole point of the meme is implying that there is in fact a war, but they're not allowed to talk about the war. So he is in fact working on Realm, but he's not allowed to talk about it. Additionally, HiRez's, or specifically Heroic Leap Studios, are still hiring on their website. They're still looking for an advanced gameplay programmer for Realm Royale, so they're not done here. And just the other day, on the 16th of April, Thor wrote, "Today, after a 30-day sprint, my team and I got to present some really cool stuff. Super proud of them, and I'm counting down the days when we can show it to the world." So from what it sounds like, we may be hearing about the specifics of this project sooner rather than later. What's particularly interesting to me is that they're basically trying to keep this under the wraps. They haven't announced Thor as working on Realm Royale, and they haven't really talked much about having any significant project for Realm Royale. And this may honestly be a good idea. More of a surprise drop can sometimes create more hype for things like this. What we don't really know is the scale of things that we can expect. And that's mostly because we have no idea how long they've been working on this. Development on Realm Royale was stopped quite a while ago, so anything is possible here. The game is still labeled as early access on Steam, so this could range from a publication as a no longer early access game to a port to Unreal 4, probably not to 5 because that's a bit too new, but who knows, or something completely different. It could just be a completely reworked patch that kind of resets the game in a similar way to the patch that HiRez's Chris did for Paladins after OB64, if any of you remember that. But I would suspect, given HiRez's secrecy about this, that we can likely expect at least some serious changes. The timing wouldn't be terrible either. The phase of the market just being flooded with Battle Royale games is over, but Fortnite and Apex Legends have proven that if you have a quality game that people enjoy and that is frequently refreshed, then people will keep playing it even past the hype of the concept itself. And I honestly believe that Realm Royale is one of the few games that came out outside of those that actually has this potential, that actually has this value if the time is invested into it. But obviously the first time around it didn't, and that is something we need to talk about if we want to look at what they need to get right this time. So when Realm Royale came out, it was kind of a surprise launch in a way, because Realm Royale was originally Paladins Battlegrounds, a very messy game that honestly did not have much potential at all. It was built on Paladins itself, but then was moved over to its own launcher, and it came out at a time where Fortnite happened to have a server outage on that very day, or patch or something, so a bunch of big Fortnite streamers were looking for another game to play. This brought absolutely massive hype to the game, and tons of people tried it out, and honestly at the time the devs were not ready for it. HiRez's did not expect that level of hype that quickly, and the game was still in a very experimental alpha testing type of phase, so that was kind of rough, and that's an understatement. But honestly, that could have been worked out at the time. The issues lied elsewhere. The issues lied in the devs basically fangirling for some of the very big streamers giving their relatively small game attention, which honestly, from the perspective of dev, is absolutely understandable, but that meant that the management of the game, the higher-ups, had some opinions that were very influenced by what certain streamers had to say about the game. Unfortunately, being popular for being good at a game is not the same as being good at designing a game or knowing what the best design choices are. Some of the suggestions made by those streamers were great, others not so much. This also combined with the fact that some of the higher-ups at HiRez wanted to make a successful shooter that is very much focused on being a shooter. HiRez had started as a company that made shooters and had many attempts at making a shooter gun-focused game since. Yet their most successful game is character and ability based and doesn't have much to do with shooters at all. Their most recent shooter heavy game, Rogue Company, unfortunately flopped pretty hard. These Fortnite streamers coming over were mostly shooter fans, so obviously they wanted more hit scan, more shooting, less abilities and all that stuff, and that's what they got. But when it came to being a shooter, Fortnite was already the better game. It was already polished to be a shooter and primarily a shooter. And if you're looking for an even more shooter-heavy experience, there is already Apex Legends, which is primarily a fast-paced shooter. Realm Royale's biggest selling point was that it was not that, and it appealed to people that didn't want that. But it also didn't restrict itself in a similar fashion to Spellbreak, where you can only use spells. You had throwing weapons, you had guns, you had abilities, and you had different classes for different playstyles. Resulting from that, you had a general idea of what to expect when going into a match based on your own playstyle, but that was then also adjusted by the items that you found along the way. On top of that, there was the shard and crafting mechanic, which reduced RNG heavily, which is also something that can be very frustrating in other battle royales, because it allowed you to, at specific places on the map, craft specific weapons that you wanted. You couldn't just get them for free, you needed to get some rewards first in order to be able to craft them, but it was a really cool way for people to choose part of their loadout while still keeping some randomness in it. It also very naturally created contested hot zones without forcing them. If Realm Royale can find its path back to this character-focused and ability-focused meta, where there's a lot of variety in terms of playstyle that is possible without making one playstyle overbearing compared to the others, then I think it would have massive potential in any sort of reboot format. Obviously, at the moment when this is happening, the game would need advertising so people don't run into a ton of games with bots immediately, but I do think that a revive of this game in this year is possible. There aren't that many big games around right now that would contest it that haven't been there for ages already. Thor being involved in this also makes me very hopeful. He's been grinding this game since the very start, so he definitely knows what it was like and what people liked about it, and he's most certainly passionate about it. He also used to work on Gigantic, a game that I really like, which I think is something that could carry over well into Realm Royale, just taking some aspects from that game, some inspiration from that. Overall, I truly hope that with the help of this new team, they can turn Realm Royale around. I believe that the game never had the chance to live out its full potential. If it returns to its roots and sees sufficient advertising to not have to play against bots, I would absolutely be down to play it again and get a feel for whatever it's become. If we hear anything new about it, I'll of course let you know. Consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you want to get notified of whenever that video comes out. Other than that, in the next days I'll be talking about a PvP survival game coming out soon that also has some very interesting potential. Also more in the ability-based direction, so stay tuned for that. I thank you very much for watching and hope to see you for the next one soon. SLOTH, out.